That's actually like my brand image. And I think it goes with the whole atypical ballerina. I love, again, the juxtaposition of like beautiful ballet classical movement with a grungy downtown New York City block. I think it's so unique, and I think it really describes me as Candy Tong. I think I'm more of an edgier, like daring, confident woman who's like bound to break barriers.
I'm Carolyn Hadlock, Executive Creative Director at Young & Larimore, and this is the Beautiful Thinkers Project, a podcast where I ask founders, creators, leaders, and visionaries how they bring their ideas to life. As we enter these conversations with thinkers across disciplines like art, science, and business, we'll learn a little bit more about the practices and identifiers that create beautiful thinking, something defined so individually, but so universally recognizable. Welcome to the Beautiful Thinkers Project. Today, we are talking with Candy Tong, who is a ballerina, model, and entrepreneur, founder of the Candy Tong Collective, and she is based in New York City. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on here with you.
I think the place to start is, you sort of defy the classic ballerina archetype. And if you could tell me your story of how you got into ballet and how you defy those sort of traditional archetypes.
Definitely. So I grew up in San Francisco, California, and I pretty much fell in love with dancing at an early age of 9 years old. And I remember specifically telling my mom after school, I think around 4th or 5th grade, saying that I want to dance professionally. And my mom didn't even look at me crazy or anything. She was like, okay, let's do it. At that young age, I was already, I think, dancing for more than 8 to 10 hours a day. And yeah, the local studio I grew up at even told me to audition for San Francisco Ballet at the time for the school. I got accepted at age 10 in one of the highest levels for that age. And I was with girls who were 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
It was crazy. And I was blessed to have given a full scholarship. I was named the youngest Claire, as well as one of the first Asians to be Claire at age 11 in 2007, I believe, or 2009. It honestly feels like forever ago. It was forever ago.
A lifetime ago.
A lifetime ago. So I was very lucky to have my mom and dad like, oh, just go after your dreams. Do whatever makes you happy. And they've been like that with my brothers as well. And so growing up into this classical ballet world where we have to mature so quickly. I mean, moved away from home when I was 15. I moved to New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so young.
So young. But again, I think we all are just so determined to start a career so early that we kind of have blinders on. So I moved here and worked with two mentors of mine. One is Drew Jacoby, who's like a world phenomenon dancer and choreographer, as well as a French teacher named Francois Perron. And they actually got me ready for international ballet competition in Helsinki. Absolutely outrageous experience. You're dancing and competing with dancers all over the world. Like, it's already hand-picked selection to even enter into this competition. So it was an eye-opening experience. And after that, I got a contract as a trainee or an apprentice with Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle. So that really was my first job. Won a couple competitions in between, and then got an offer in London. So I moved to London for English National Ballet School. Worked with a company there. Unfortunately, got my first serious injury where I fractured my right metatarsal.
Oh.
And because of that, my parents, I've always been about school. I've always loved school and wanted a quote-unquote normal life. Yeah. And so during my teenage years, I told my mom, I was like, you know what, I do want to be in this dance world, but I also want to have, this Hannah Montana life, best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So I went to public school for only 3 hours and then went straight into training.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about school because with that much training.
I graduated high school in 2 years, which is how I was able to move to New York when I was 15. So when I got injured, Luckily, my parents told me to apply for colleges just as a backup plan. And I was kind of in denial. I was like, Mom, I was like, there's no way like I'm gonna get a contract this year. Like, no. But thankfully I did because of that injury. I did have to resort to plan B. So I went to UC Irvine and again graduated in just 2.5 years with a BFA in dance. I did minor in business, but unfortunately had to drop that because I got offered my dream contract here at Complexions Contemporary Ballet in New York,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
freshman year.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, they told me to finish school. So it is actually very rare for a company, for their directors to be so prominent about education. So I was actually very surprised by the fact that they wanted me to finish before joining the company.
Yeah.
And I'm actually very thankful for that because otherwise I wouldn't have had all these experiences I've had now before leading up to moving to New York City again.
Yeah. So they waited 2 years for you then, right? I
Yeah.
mean, wow.
They asked me to come on tour as well when I was in school, but unfortunately I couldn't do that because there's like specific classes I had to attend in order to get my degree. But again, all worth it, all worth the wait. I believe timing is everything and everything happens for a reason, as cliche as that sounds.
I'm curious, a lot of people in the arts go to school as maybe a springboard and waiting till they get that offer or they get that contract.
Right.
And especially when you were going to school for dance and then, you have this amazing company invite you to join them. Was there, I guess, what was the expanded thinking behind not just leaping? Was it really the backup plan and you just needed to have something more for life, or because you're going to school to learn to do the thing that they've already wanting to hire you for?
Right. So in the classical ballet world, unfortunately, education in college and school in general is just deemed as a failure, which is why I was in such denial when my parents told me to apply for college. I was like, no, there's no way. And to be honest, my first day at UC Irvine, I was not happy.
Mm.
And the funny thing is, my professors and the dean of the dance department, they seriously asked me, why are you here? Like, you should be in a company. So we were kind of on the same page already. And they basically pushed me to even finish faster and like to enter the dance world again.
I think it's really cool at that early age you knew that you wanted both lives for a while. So you don't have regrets. How many people and
No,
artists are
no,
like, I
yeah.
had no youth, I had no, childhood. And for me, the really fascinating piece is your plan B turned into plan A, because even when you did get that contract, you were still like, no, I need to stay this path. So that is
Yeah.
a very long-term strategy for a very young person. That's
Yeah.
that's that's really commendable. Tell me about when you write about not being an archetypical ballet dancer. What do you mean by that, and how have you addressed that?
So, growing up, obviously, before puberty, I was your typical classical ballerina, like we call a buttonhead, meaning that I was categorized as a string bean, long legs, short torso, just the perfect technique. Once puberty hit, your body changes, which is normal. And I had a growth spurt at 13. So I was like average height. I was maybe 5'5", 5'6". And then all of a sudden, within a couple months, I sprouted to 5'10". With that challenge, I faced a lot of growing pains and weight fluctuations. I mean, starting at 15, 16 years old, I was already being told that I need to lose weight in order to fit into the corps de ballet. And I kid you not, I was still very thin, but because
Yeah.
I was so tall, I needed to look like I was, tiny. I know I'm big boned. I am starting to be more muscular than the other girls, and curvy. I have hips, I have boobs. I will say that, and I'm
You're
just
just normal.
yeah, I'm a womanly figure,
Yeah.
and I like that about myself now. There's no way I'm gonna be deemed as your typical classical ballerina. And so when I stepped my foot into Complexions, I embarrassingly did not know much about the company. Just because I've been in this lily white ballet world
Mm.
where all I knew was pink tights, tutu, and tiara. So when I saw the dancers and I spoke to the directors, Dwight Rhoden, Desmond Richardson, I was like, wow, I was like, you guys are amazing. I love what you guys are about, all about diversity, not just in body shapes and body types, but in race. And they just celebrate each individual dancer. And it's
Yeah.
so amazing to see everyone move in different ways, but at the same time, we're all so similar. Because I think we all have that same sort of background of, oh, we didn't really fit in X amount of company or wherever we came from. But
Yeah.
here we all can join together and we're all one. So, long story short, I think being your atypical ballerina is such a blessing in disguise, and I think there's always a home for everyone.
I loved their mission statement because they were talking, I mean, truly believing that dance can change the world and that it's about inclusion and not from just, like you said, not from a how it looks viewpoint, but just the authentically, at its core, celebrating different ethnicity, shape, sizes, genders, all of that. And I'm not well versed at all in the dance world, but what are some of the differences between what is more considered modern ballet and then classical ballet?
Classical ballet, you could say that everything is, I don't want to use the word rigid, but you can see clear lines. So everything must be very accurate in terms of alignment, head position, arm position. Like you can't go off a certain degree. And so everything needs to look, I want to say, military form. Like everything needs to be exact,
Very technical.
very technical. Whereas contemporary ballet, you're able to go off of the line. For example, I would like to say if this is like a fifth position, right? We're able to body roll out of it. So we go from a classical line into a hip hop movement back into a classical line, which is
Oh,
so
cool.
cool and very unique. So we are basically merging different styles. So it goes ballet, contemporary, modern, hip hop into one. And I think it's just more appealing to the eye. I always recommend newcomers to the ballet to see, I'm not biased or anything, but to see complexions just because we dance to rap music, we dance to David Bowie, Metallica, as well as Mozart and Bach. But yeah, I feel like I'm just boasting about my company that I work for that I love so much.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, and you guys are celebrated and you travel all over the world. You perform everywhere. So
Yeah.
to see something that's alternative, be able to sort of go on the mainstream circuit and, like you said, expose new audiences and new people, and most importantly, new dancers, who are looking maybe to break out. Was it hard for you to sort of unlearn or to go from that fifth position to this hip hop rollout? Was that
Oh,
difficult?
definitely. Basically, I just needed to loosen up. And I remember my first year with complexions, like, that was like my biggest correction. Like, can he loosen up? Like, can he go take a hip hop lesson when you have free time? Like, some of my colleagues even told me, like, pretend you're at a club. Like, don't think that you have to be so stiff, like, loosen up your neck. Don't be afraid to look around. So it was definitely difficult at first, but once you get the hang of it, it just feels so awesome.
One of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you as well is, the theme this season is replenish, but I know in particular you did just have a pretty big surgery for a torn tendon. You shared that journey, which I loved, on your social media feed. But do you mind just talking about that?
So I ruptured my post-tibial tendon. If you don't know what that is, it's your second biggest tendon in your leg next to your Achilles. That actually happened in September of 2021. However, at that time, surgery was never in the talks, and we knew it wasn't a full rupture. So we thought we could, work on it with PT.
Hmm.
Hopefully, it will repair by itself over time. And so, unfortunately, from the months of September to December, was during our home season in New York, I didn't even get to perform once. I was put into a boot on and off for 3 months. I even resulted into a cortisone injection, hoping that would help.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, obviously, things didn't get better, and it was just a miserable time. I was in California for the holidays in December, working with my doctor there. I needed to just sit down and
Be still.
not be hustling.
Yeah.
And it actually did get better. I was dancing for a little bit, was in a better mindset, decided to get my second MRI just to see if things, were progressing.
Yeah.
The night before I was supposed to fly to New York City, I get a call from my doctor saying that I need to go under operation tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was completely shocked. I woke up from the surgery with my doctor standing on top of me, sorry, in front of me, saying, Kenny, it's a great thing that you got surgery right now because your tendon was hanging by a thread. And I was like, oh, sorry, what? So this recovery process is pretty much a year long
Wow.
recovery to get back to the level I was at before. I was in a hard cast for 2 weeks and in a boot for 6 with no weight bearing. And I decided to recover at home in California where I had help with my family. Just because, again, I was so immobile and in so much pain, was on heavy pain
Yeah.
med. And I was not doing well mentally, to be honest. And I think so many dancers go through this when they're injured.
Mm.
Even in small injuries, we all are like, doubting ourselves whether or not we want to pursue with this career. And I just remember the first 2 months being actually, kind of depressed and thinking, I was like, will I ever get back on my feet? Will I ever be able to wear point shoes again? And luckily, I have a distraction with my brand, Candy Tong Collection, which I'm so thankful for because that really was a good thing to put my energy towards when I was healing. But yeah, it was a battle. It was a roller coaster, and I think my friends really saw my emotions fluctuate through Zoom, through FaceTime. Once I started getting the green light to go back to the gym, to start practicing to walk again, was when my mood changed. It took a long time.
Yeah. And you had even talked about how you'd been dancing in pain. Like it's been a longer journey even
Right,
than that, kind of
right.
moving through the pain. And I love it. I remember seeing a post, you were in the studio and you were doing this, like you're showing your feet and you're like, this is how. And I loved that because I just think that, so often, especially with social media, we see the lives in the persona they want to put forward. And so
Right,
then the pressure just like cascades down, especially
right,
with girls, And so the fact that you showed yourself in your hospital bed and show
right.
yourself like, it's incremental, but I'm working and I'm back at it, I think is so refreshing because everybody has hardships and adversity. And like you said, you were able to kind of find that silver lining and, expand your collection, which I love as well. Did you have a hard time thinking about whether or not you wanted to talk about this on your social media feed or put that hospital photo on?
I was just gonna say that because I find it interesting that you see the journey on my social media because I was dealing a lot with whether or not I want to document social media because before even going to surgery, I was like, I want to document everything and show people what it's really like because you really don't see it much. You only see
Yeah,
the glamour, especially with dancers, because I think again, injury is just deemed as failure. We all have just so much negativity in our head. Like it's
yeah.
really hard. And if you really look into my social media, I started talking about it and then I stopped for a
hmm
while.
I did.
I didn't have any motivation whatsoever to post anything on social media or even let alone talk about it just because I was getting like hundreds of messages every day asking how I was doing and it felt so tiresome and it felt like I needed to owe people like an explanation every
Yeah.
week. So it almost felt like a chore more than something I wanted to do.
hmm
And so I was like, you know what, Keenan, I'm just going to post about my injury whenever I felt like I was going to, wanted to talk about it. It was almost therapeutic when I did, just explaining what's going on. Obviously, I'm doing it more now that I'm back at the studio. But looking back, I kind of wish I did talk more about the ups and downs just because I think it'd be more relatable to dancers who might face an
Yeah.
injury like this or something similar. But yeah, it was very challenging, and social media is a blessing and a curse. I mean,
Yeah.
I always tell people don't believe anything. Like some of these pictures I post, I've been taking like 2 years ago. Like you will never know, or maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was like right now. So especially for young girls in their teenage years, like it's something you should not rely on whatsoever.
Yeah. I actually really enjoyed seeing the sort of interplay of what you were dealing with because it almost was like you're not letting go of who you were
Mhm.
and but you're still going through,
Right,
it made it feel more like this is a moment in time. This is not my
right.
destiny. I'll get through this. And so I actually think even though it was organic, it
Yeah.
was kind of nice and it didn't feel like too much of a deviation, you
I'm
know?
happy to hear that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So talk about social media. I mean, I know you from Instagram. Are you on other platforms as well? Like, how did you get into it?
Yeah, I'm also on TikTok. I did have a YouTube journey during quarantine, but that was kind of like a quarantine hobby I ventured in. I didn't really think about Instagram as a business or a marketing tool until maybe after college. Obviously, it was so much easier to grow back then because it was so new, and
Yeah.
TikTok and all these other things were not even existing at the time. But I was asked to model for a few photographers. One of the first ballet photography pages at that time. The photographer actually danced with me at San Francisco Ballet School, and his sister was in my level and one of my good friends, still to this day. Because of him, my Instagram blew up in a day from like 100 followers to 10,000.
Wow. That is quite a growth spurt.
It was just so cool to see. I was like, wow, I was like, this is insane. Like, I never would have thought that, I'd be having this following. When I started realizing, like, I need to market myself. Like, it's possible I can get a job through Instagram or a social media platform. So I started building a book or a portfolio or the feed.
Yeah.
And I love content creation. I just love the whole aspect of it, and meeting different content creators, whether they're dancers or artists or musicians, I think is so cool.
Yeah.
And it's such a great networking platform. I mean, I'm meeting you today, and it's so awesome because I don't think have met all these amazing, inspiring individuals without it. And I think it's bringing a whole new society together. It's
Yeah.
really awesome. Blessing and a curse.
Yeah, and I want to hear about the curse in a second, but I have to ask you, your feed is so artistically beautiful. And as somebody, in advertising, we do a lot of content creation for clients. And I know it looks so off the cuff and easy, but it's a ton of work. But you work with so many different photographers, but one thing in particular that I love, anytime you put yourself in a industrial city scene, where did that come from? Because it's such a beautiful juxtaposition.
Thank you. So I would like to say that's actually like my brand image,
Yeah.
and I think it goes with the whole atypical ballerina. I love again the juxtaposition of like beautiful ballet classical movement with a grungy downtown New York City block. I think it's so unique, and I think it really describes me as Candy Tong. I think I'm more of an edgier, like daring, confident woman who's like bound to break barriers. So I just love pushing the edge, no matter what I do.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And that's a great segue to one of my favorite things that you wrote was beauty is dangerous, but intelligence is lethal. Talk about that. Where did that come from?
So I think as a model, as a dancer, again, from a stereotypical viewpoint, I think we're all about looks. I think that's what people see from the outside world, and especially as a dance major, we're always like, "Oh, dance major, like, what are you gonna do with that? Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't you be doing something else? Or like, you're a dancer, like, you're not making X amount of money, you know?" And what people don't know is that dancers are very, very intelligent people. I mean, like I said, we had to grow up at such a young age. So, yeah, beauty can get you to places, but intelligence is something that can break down your door. And I mean, I feel like I've paved a very abnormal yet successful path. And at 26, I'm very happy with the growth that I've made, although I do think I can do a lot more.
Well, that's why I like to use the word intelligence versus smart or, because I think intelligence is emotional intelligence and street intelligence. And I also think intelligence transcends time. That what I liked about it is beauty is so transient, And so you have this sort of like the triple threat, if you will. And in so many ways, you've done your MBA. You've just done it in the real world. I mean, you launched the brand. What was the impetus for that?
I've always loved the fashion world. And to be frank, it kind of fell into my lap. So I believe, oh goodness, in 2019, I was interviewed with Point Magazine, Dance Magazine, as well as Dance Informa. And a big ballet distributor, I guess, read the article and reached out to me. We got in a meeting. He brought me out to Chicago for an in-person meeting, sat me down, and asked me, have you ever thought about having your own line?
That's
I
amazing.
was like, wow. I was like, yes, but no. Like,
Yeah.
as a little girl, definitely. Like, I was drawing sketches of costumes, of leotards, of all these different things, but I never really thought I would be, having my own fashion line or clothing brand, dancewear brand, however you want to call it. It's been such a journey, a very hard journey. I mean, it launched during COVID. That was bold of me. I mean, everything I do, I feel like is just not your typical
Yeah.
endeavor.
That's your brand. I love
Yeah,
it.
fitting, right?
Yeah.
It's been so cool to see my sketches come to real life. It's so amazing to see it in the stores and on young girls, even professional dancers, the ABT, Swedish ballet. Like, every time I see it, I get so giddy. Like, I feel like I'm 5 years old in a candy store. Like, my
Yeah.
eyes are just so wide open, the biggest smile. I still can't believe it. I feel like it's not real.
One of the things that I ask all of my people that I talk to is how would you define beautiful thinking?
Beautiful thinking. Hmm. I would say beautiful thinking stems from an open mind. It's so vital nowadays. And with beautiful thinking, I think we can all make this world a better place. Just even with a simple hello to a stranger.
Hmm.
You never know whether that person next to you or behind you in a grocery store is having a bad day or they need some cheering up. I mean, a simple hello, like, I appreciate it. So I think obviously a positive attitude and going about your day with a bright smile and just a good outlook.
Possibilities. Yeah.
Stability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am interested in how you talk about a curse. Like, how has social media
Oh,
been a curse for you? And then, what advice would you have for people, who are you, but 10 years, 15 years younger, getting into this space?
so social media is a curse because I think, especially in this technology age, we spend so much time
Hmm.
crafting and curating a perfect feed.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all say don't compare to X, but it is very difficult. Even outside of social media, we're constantly comparing to the person next to us.
Yeah.
And it's just so much easier because we're looking at a phone screen. And I think it's so important for people to know, especially again, young girls, to know that whatever you see on the screen is not real life. I mean, the amount of apps of changing someone's body, even
Hmm.
video now I've seen,
I
it's
know. Face tuning.
it is insane.
Yeah.
And just know that real life is so much better. I mean, you never know what that person is going through a picture, even a reel, a video, or an Instagram story.
Yeah.
Everything is forced. It's forced. You're just curating a life that you wish you had. But I say it's a blessing because, again, it's a great marketing tool. You can get all these jobs. I wouldn't have been signed to a modeling agency if it weren't for my social media. Life is about balance. Social media is about balance. And I'm thankful for this injury because it kind of gave me a cleanse. I steered off of social media for a bit, and
it's like a reset.
It's a reset, and I honestly recommend that for everyone.
Okay, so we'll end our conversation, but when's your next performance? I know you still got a ways to go, but do you have something lined up yet?
So I actually just started dancing maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh, so you are back on stage.
Not like fully, just like a very simple movement. So at the bar, but crossing my fingers. I don't want to jinx it, but I'm hoping the fall. I'm hoping the next season I'll be back full time. Don't count on it, but that is my goal.
As somebody who finished high school and college in 2.5 years, I would not doubt that you will be back on stage in the fall.
Yeah. Very impatient person, but I need to be patient for this.
Yes. And I really loved your last note about balance. As somebody who's dedicated her life to literally balancing on your toes and sort of taking that out into your life, I think that's a lovely way to end.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you found something that inspires you to think strange, different, new, and beautiful thoughts. This podcast was created and produced by Young & Larimore, an independent agency focused on helping national consumer brands take a stand. To explore more about today's conversation and all of the other thinkers I've spoken to, check out our blog, The Beautiful Thinkers Project, or follow us on Instagram @TheBeautifulThinkers.